Welcome to the Inner Coach Classroom with me, Emma Benyon, a multi-certified coach and educator with over 13 years of experience within the education sector. This podcast is all about helping educators and leaders like you to build their inner coach so they can become confident, self-aware, and transform how they work and lead. So if you are an educator or leader, then you are in the right place for coaching, mindset, and reflection. So, in today's episode, I wanted to chat with you all about how often do you let the fear of what might happen hold you back? Now, this is a topic which I am sure will resonate with you, as it does with many of the clients that I've worked with. And it's something that is really personal to me too. And before I started doing what I'm doing now and talking about building your inner coach in relation to being an educator or leader, I spent a lot of time working with mothers. And 7 years ago, I started doing that. And I was really in this place of, being quite fearful, especially when it came to social media. And also having conversations with friends, family, peers about what I was doing as well. Showing up, showing my face, putting new products out there, going live. And as my business, changed and developed, bringing me to where we are now, I moved through, so many different seasons of life. My daughter grew up. And there were so many different things that I felt really fearful about within that time, and things that really held me back, taking up space as a business, as a coach, as a business owner, and also within my role in education too. And I often think that when we are also mums, we go for something that is just for us, we start a business, maybe we take a different step in our career. We can be so fearful of taking those first steps, taking those next steps. And those fears are absolutely valid. And there's actually an element within that, of leaning into that fear, leaning into that uncomfortableness and, doing it anyway. Because when we think about fear, there's no evidence often for us to be fearful of taking that step. We're telling ourselves stories and our brain doesn't know what's real and what's not. So when we say, I can't do it, I can't do that, I'm not going to be any good. I wonder if that's the same language you would use with your students, with your colleagues, with your children, with your clients, if they were struggling with something, or would you be saying something else? For example, this is a example that I use quite a lot with clients. If your son or daughter was learning to ride a bike and they were I just can't do it. I cannot do it. Don't let go. Keep hold of me. Don't let go. And they're so scared to have a go on their own without you holding onto the back of the bike. What would you be saying to them? Well, you'd likely be telling them to give it a go. You'd be absolutely cheerleading them on to being able to ride their bike independently. And yet so often we don't turn that kindness and compassion back on ourselves. We beat ourselves up for even the littlest things. We let that inner critic be really, really loud. And so I wonder if there's something that, is holding you back, something you are feeling fearful of. And if you could turn that language into kindness and compassion for yourself, as you do so willingly with others. And if you can then start to really build up that inner coach and quieten that inner critic. Now, I talked earlier about some of those examples, and I want to share some more because it might be things like, going live on Instagram, messaging someone you admire, maybe someone you want to work with in your business or your career, or maybe someone you want to come in and talk to your students. It might even be wearing something new because often we can also, feel like we might have lost our identity. And maybe that is where the fear comes from too. And this is one of my examples because when I had my daughter, I just didn't know who I was anymore. And that's so common for us as mothers. The clothes that I might have worn before, they just no longer felt comfortable. There were potentially new things I wanted to try and wear, but actually I just felt really comfortable of actually trying it on. And then would I actually wear it? But then it might also be things like, going for a promotion at work, putting it out that you want to move up the career ladder, that you want to try this different type of job, that, it might be moving into the corporate world, maybe from education or as a leader. It might be, as I mentioned before, maybe you want to start something outside of your day job and start to build something, build a business, share an idea. And we can spend so much time, living in fear of so many different things. What if that happened? What if that happened? What if that happened? Not having trust in ourselves and our decisions, and therefore just not living life authentically. And, when you look back, some of those things that potentially you're quite fearful of might seem quite silly. So, one for me, I was really worried about getting my nose pierced, always wanted to from when I was 16. And I was in my late 20s when I had it done. Now, imagine if I got that done earlier. I mean, my life probably wouldn't have been drastically different, yet it might have made me feel more like me and showing up of who I wanted to be. And, what we want to be able to be is in a space where, we are living life aligned to our values, to who we want to be, because that makes things so much easier in all aspects of our lives. We can navigate with so much more grace, calmness, feeling more grounded because we're not in conflict with ourselves. That inner critic is quiet and our inner coach is loud and cheerleading us on. And so I wonder, how often do you let the fear of what might happen hold you back? And just notice what comes up for you when I say that. What is coming up when, you think about that fear of what is holding you back? So I want to share some simple tools, which if you've listened to the podcast before, you will know that I love to share simple tools that you can use straight away. And today's are all about journaling because as an educator, as a leader, and developing our reflective skills, journaling is a beautiful way for us to dig deep and to really listen to ourselves because when we give ourselves space to listen, we really allow ourselves time to pause, to reflect. And that can make a massive difference to us, getting all of those thoughts and feelings out of our head onto paper. And then we can, if we choose to, start to make different choices, start to make a decision on where we want to go, set goals, set actions, set intentions that really help us to move forwards in the way that we want. And journaling is such a gorgeous way to do that because it really allows us to build that self-awareness and to just dig deep. So I want to share some prompts with you. And so you might want to grab pen and paper, or maybe just pause the podcast here and come back to it later, or continue to listen and then make a note of them later. So the prompts I want to share with you, and I invite you to just sit, take some time to pause and reflect with them. When did you last feel into the fear, the uncertainty, and do it anyway? And then the next prompt is, what would your life look like if you weren't fearful of what might happen? And then the final prompt that I want you to think about is, what action could I take today to move forwards? move forwards to what I want away from the fear. So take a moment, pause, and I really would love to hear what came up for you with those prompts. Now, I hope that you have enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. And I would absolutely love to hear your reflections. So please do come and share with me over on my socials, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn over at emmabenyon.coach. And if you have enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the next one, then please make sure you subscribe and follow. And also, why not take a moment to share this episode and these gorgeous journaling prompts with a friend or colleague, and also take a moment to leave a review. I'd really appreciate it. Let's build your inner coach together, one episode at a time.